My name is Lexi with Copper Bay, and today I get to talk to one of my really good friends. He's in the industry. His name's Lance, and we're going to kind of chat. He's been doing this for about 25, 26 years.
26 years, yes.
And we're going to go all the way back to kind of how he got involved in the construction industry. He kind of worked straight through 2008, going to give a little bit more advice on housing crash, some of those key points that a lot of people like to talk about in the market, and just give you a little bit more context as to like how we got there. So, Lance,
Take it away.
take it away.
All right, sounds good. So I started in home building fresh out of college. I actually studied finance in college, and I've been in it ever since. It's a tremendous industry. I've had the chance to work in all over the state of Michigan, in Nashville, and actually different parts of the country during many different times, during very very good times, very very tough times, and everything in between.
You studied finance. So
Yep.
what made you think like instead of going Wall Street finance, like the home building was it?
Good question. So when originally I wanted to go work in New York on Wall Street. And while I was in college, I actually had an internship at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter. I liked some part of it, but it just didn't really feel 100% like me. So as I was getting close to graduation, I actually had been interviewing for consulting jobs with
Okay.
Deloitte and Touche, Anderson, companies like that. And then I just stumbled across an interview with a national home builder, Pulte Homes.
Okay.
And
They're huge, right?
coincidentally, yes, they're a national builder.
Are
Yeah,
they
they're
the
top.
largest in the national?
They're not always, they're usually in the top three.
Okay.
Yep, just depending on the year. But I really enjoyed the interview, loved what the company was all about. And so I took an internship there before I had graduated, took the internship, loved it, had a great mentor, and then joined forces with them out of college. So,
Okay. And so you said you started with Pulte in Detroit.
correct.
And how long did you, and that was just for the internship, or what took you to, which I believe your biggest like turn point with that was when you ended up in the Nashville office.
Yeah, so I started with them right out of college, 2000, 2001, right around there as a full-time position.
Hmm.
And then, I was fortunate enough where we had a really talented division and, great development path, and was able to leverage some of that into becoming a manager, and then was able to have the opportunity to be a vice president down in Nashville for them.
Awesome. And so then when you were in Nashville and you moved to Nashville, I'm assuming like 2004,
2007.
2007. Okay.
Yes.
So when you moved to Nashville, what was like the difference in like your scope of work? Obviously, you became a VP
Hmm.
in the Nashville office, like
Yep.
because you're just simply the best.
Yep.
But you are. But like I want to know kind of like what changed shift wise with the job, and then so
Mhm.
that was 2007. So
Mhm.
business was booming, and then kind of take me through what happened 2008.
So I think that in the southeast, with the exception of Florida, they were a little bit more insulated from the market crash as opposed to Michigan,
Hmm.
who was so highly dependent on the automotive industry,
Right.
right? And so that was a little bit different, but I think that during that time, for a job scope for me, it was still focused on the same department. It was just a little bit more operational. And then the biggest thing was really just, how do we navigate our company to continue to be successful? While the industry is, it ended up going down actually about 90%,
Right.
which is a huge drop,
Yeah.
right? And so figuring out ways to still be successful and still be profitable, not only being creative with new ideas, but making sure that, because in home building, it's a pretty simplified industry,
Hmm.
and it's simplified to enough where your secret sauce is your people,
Right.
right? And so your people, because you're so decentralized, the magic really happens if the people can execute on a high level,
Right.
right? Day in and day out.
Hmm.
And that's kind of the magic of the difference between what makes a home builder great, average, or maybe not doing as well.
Right. So when it goes down 90%, like for a national builder, like
Mhm.
what does that look like?
Well, the home building industry at large, when the crash hit, was down about 90%, right? Permits, things like that. For example, if you look at, um, the '80s, the decade of the '80s, the decade of the '90s, on average, there's probably 25 to 27 million new homes built in that decade.
Right.
From 2010 to 2020,
Hmm.
there was only 5 to 6 million homes built.
And
Now, what's interesting about that is at that point, approximately 80% of the home build industry was comprised of what you would classify as smaller builders. So
mhm.
obviously they got hit the hardest. But you think about that as a huge and dramatic drop from what we're typically seeing on a national average over a decade.
Yeah. And so that's something that you and I have like talked about in
Yep.
the past. And it's something that I wasn't super educated on, but then
Hmm.
you like, because, you were able to live through it and you're able to
Yep.
explain this to me on a much larger scale. When I think, because I'm turning 30, right? And when I think 2000,
Congratulations.
thank you. And when I think, market crash, I was in eighth grade and I just remember it was the real estate market to me.
Right.
And, people freaked out and,
Right.
people lost their homes and that kind of stuff happened.
Right.
And for me, that's all I thought,
Yep.
but it was so much bigger than that. And
Right.
so when we talk about the 2008 market crash,
Hmm.
dive into the like home builders and like what that really looked like on, how certain companies, the company that you work for and how
Hmm.
they were able to like soar and, store all these lots that they were able to comprise and stuff like
Hmm.
that from 2008 forward.
Well, I think it was probably different on multiple levels, depending on the entity. So I think that during that time, we had a big run up prior to that, right? So what had happened is most of the home builders were already owned and kind of stuck with more expensive lots on their balance sheet,
Right.
right? And so when the crash came, and then all of a sudden you're competing against short sales and foreclosures, right? To be competitive, right, with what was happening in the price in the market, what a lot of national home builders did is they had to end up impairing their lots, and they can do that because they're publicly traded. However, for private and smaller companies, they have to absorb that reduction, and that's why you saw a lot of great home building organizations during that time, go out of business as a function of that.
Yeah. And so for some people that don't know, like what does it mean to impair a lot? Because I feel like that's something that, a lot of people don't understand
Yep.
that either.
Yep. So impairing a lot is just writing down a lot. So like let's say you had a lot and it was valued at $80,000, and because of market adjustments now it's down to 40 or 30,000. It's impairing those and writing them down. So then you can move forward and sell that home at a publicly traded builder for a different price.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yep. And so then you were talking about, the difference in the decade, right? From
Yep.
2010 to 20
Yep.
versus what was happening in the 80s and 90s.
Hmm.
Another huge touch point with, we don't have a crystal ball, we can't see everything, but
Hmm.
based off of what, we can see with
Hmm.
our knowledge, um, those homes weren't being built, right, for 10 years.
Yeah, there was a dramatic decrease in homes being built, not only because of the crash, but it was much more difficult for home builders to obtain capital to build houses.
Right.
In addition to that, during that crash, especially in the state of Michigan, there were tens and thousands of skilled trades that left the state.
Right. And they went
Right?
south.
Exactly.
Exactly. So, we lost trades.
Yep.
There's how many home deficit would you say there is in the country right now for people who are qualified to buy versus
You
market
know,
inventory?
yeah. So I think for the home deficit, it's really difficult to give a national average on that because I think it's very, real estate's very local.
Right.
And, I think that the closer that you get to what the median price is in that particular market, the harder it is to find homes.
Right.
As you go up in price, especially with higher interest rates now, those homes are usually sitting a little bit longer.
Exactly. Well, then I guess instead of doing like a national, like, do you know what that number is for Michigan? Like what the deficit is, or
Well, in Michigan, I mean, the way that you look at it is you look at months of supply. So if you're in 1 to 2 months of supply, that's a strong seller's market, right? We're usually seeing significant appreciation. If you're in 3 to 4 months of supply, it's still considered a seller's market. Appreciation slows down a little bit. If you're between 5 and 6 months of supply, that's considered more of a normalized market where things are typically flat. If you go to 7 to 8 months, that ends up usually being more of a buyer's market,
Hmm.
right? Where prices go down a little bit, right? And then beyond that, obviously, prices go down much more 9 to 12 months, which is where we were in the recession,
Right.
right? But what's really, really unique about today is the increase in interest rates have obviously slowed home sales. For example, I was just looking at these statistics where they comprised all the different real estate boards in the state of Michigan, right? And if you look at the percentage of sales year over year, the percentage of sales has decreased about 12%.
Hmm.
Now, one would say, based on Economics 101, if demand is down, prices should go down.
Right.
However, because inventory is so limited, prices have actually gone up
Right.
10 to 11%. So it's very different than what you would consider a conventional approach.
Right. So, in layman's terms, we still have um, a deficit of homes that are available
Correct.
essentially for the price point in which a lot of first
Correct.
time home buyers
Correct.
and I in 2020, right, I was able to get locked into a house at 3.125%
Yep.
interest, right? So I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is a feeling but also kind of like a known thing. um, these people that all got locked in on these rates,
Mm-hmm.
right, they're all kind of sitting on the sidelines. It may have just been their starter home, they didn't plan on
Yep.
being there forever. Well, rates went from 3 to 7, right? And so all of a sudden your buying power has gone significantly down because of the interest rates. So we've got a lot of people on the sidelines that have like purchased homes at 3%. There's a lot of qualified buyers in the market that aren't really finding anything that
Mm-hmm.
they, are wanting. Um, and then to make it even further, like there's just that we didn't build homes for like a significant amount of time, just in general across the state
Mm-hmm.
of Michigan and across the country because
Mm-hmm.
of the inability to obtain financing from banks. And so just kind of like taking a step back, looking at it that way, I don't see a market crash necessarily happening based on the data that's presented to me. And I'm just curious, like, kind of how you see that.
Correct. Well, in addition to not building homes, not building as many homes during that decade across the United States, something else we have to think about is that right around, I think it was 2010, there was record breaking bankruptcies,
Right.
right? So as we progressed from 2010 to 2020, there weren't as many homes being built in the United States, right? And then in addition to that, when 2017 hit, a lot of those bankruptcies seasoned and all those buyers came back in the market,
Right.
right? And that's when things, especially in the state of Michigan, really started picking up.
Yeah.
After that, you consider we had a little bit of an interest rate hike in 2018. It slowed things down a little bit. But then after that, we had 2%, 3% interest rates, right? So bang, that put a much stronger surge into the market for demand. You throw in COVID, right? Nobody
Right.
wanted to list their house. That made the supply of homes even more difficult.
Right.
And, now we're at a point where obviously, we've increased interest rates. And, really what it's done is if you look at the number of homes in the market, it's not significantly that much higher. It's just that some of those homes, especially the higher price homes, are sitting because of the interest rate. Because for most people that maybe bought their home 6, 7, 8, however many years ago, right? They've gained a lot of appreciation on that home,
Hmm.
and they either refinanced or, like you, purchased at 2 or 3%.
Right.
So they might say to themselves, "Gosh, we've earned so much equity. We're ready for the next, second time move up home, or,
Right.
or, or whatever." However, that home has gone up significantly in price, and the interest rate is higher, making it a much more difficult thing to digest and move forward with.
Yeah, because like, you're not just moving up, by the hundreds of thousands, to go into this next move up.
Correct.
It's significance in the
Correct.
interest rate that you're seeing. And yes, you can obviously roll over, some of the equity from the homes, but a lot of people like to take that
Correct.
out. It's just one of those.
Correct.
It's just going to be very interesting to see how it kind of unfolds in the housing market. But that kind of brings me back to, and then obviously what we're doing with Copper Bay,
Yep.
right? And so we started in 2016. We saw that there was that huge deficit of homes that were being built over the last decade.
Correct.
Um, people kind of sitting on the sidelines, the bankruptcies, you name it,
Yep.
and wanted to kind of develop something where we could help people get into newer homes, because it
Hmm.
was really, we're looking at apartments, or old homes in like, think like the student areas of, the main places in Michigan that we build, Kalamazoo,
Hmm.
Portage, Grand Rapids, etc. And so we're kind of able to get people into these rental homes, which, we were talking earlier, there's not really anybody that's doing that in the state,
Right.
right? And it's kind of cool because who you're working with as well, you guys really gear towards those first time home buyers, which is also not something that you see a lot of home builders doing.
Correct.
So I kind of want to see, like, from your point on purchasing, when you think it's a good time, for someone in the market to buy, because, taking all the data that I'm seeing and making my educated guess, like
Hmm.
right now would be a great time for someone to get involved in purchase. But then I know that there are people who just don't have the means, either, the down payment or
Hmm.
the interest rates on my end, or they're relocating, and there's just reasons why people end up renting through us. But I
Hmm.
definitely see a huge perk on both ends, is the fact that we like don't have, there's a missing middle, right?
Hmm.
And I always refer to that in a lot of our marketing and like
Hmm.
our videos, and it's missing middle, and it's the middle class not really being able to find housing,
Hmm.
which is new. It's like a newer thing that's become a problem. And I think like both your segment and my segment, we're
Hmm.
kind of working together to kind of fill that void.
Hmm.
I just want to hear like what your thoughts are there
Well,
too.
I mean, my opinion is, I think in relation to what is the right time to purchase, I think when you have the need to,
Right.
and you got to look at really your own personal economy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, I had mentioned this last year and the year prior to that, even when interest rates were going up, is that if you purchase a home today, 5 years from now, that home will be worth more. And
Right.
that statement still holds true,
Right.
right? I authentically believe in that. And you can see in the statistics, even in the state of Michigan, even though sales are down, prices are going up,
Right.
right? In the double digits, which is a lot,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think when you're trying to time what is the best time to purchase, what you have to think about is this: is if interest rates go up, right, it usually drops prices. It really hasn't, though.
Right.
It might eventually stabilize prices, maybe. But if interest rates go down, then prices are going to go back up,
Right.
right? And understanding that if I have a personal need to move and it's going to improve my lifestyle, I should figure out a way to do that. Now, the number one reason first time buyers don't purchase new construction is because they don't think they can. And they
Right.
don't think they can because a lot of times there are multiple lending programs, and we specialize in this with our preferred lenders that are able to get them into that home. It's just might not be something that they're aware of,
Right.
right? And that's where the education piece comes in to help them get that.
For sure. I get to see a lot of different, we have such an array of people that rent through us. And something that's super exciting and cool is, a lot of relocations that come through Copper Bay.
Hmm.
We're like the largest single family home rental in
Right,
Michigan, which is
right.
really cool. And so we see a lot of people come in and they're not ready to really make, the purchase decision
Hmm.
yet, because they're not from here. They don't have family. And then obviously fair housing comes into play. You can't really tell
Right,
anybody anything anymore.
right.
So they kind of come through us and kind of like throw spaghetti noodles at the wall, see where they want to be. They get into a really amazing home through us, typically 3 or 4 bedrooms. And those people will stay on average from like 1 to 3 years.
Hmm.
Um, and then they start to dabble in the purchase
Yep,
in the real estate market,
yep.
right? I'm super happy to see people do that. I like love seeing people make memories through us and then be able to graduate and do things on their own. And so I do see some people kind of trickle over to you guys, and I just
Hmm.
want you to educate people a little bit on how to go from like their perfect time in the rental market to what it looks like to start their search in going straight retail, and
Hmm.
kind of making the time right for them to invest in homeownership.
Makes sense. So, and I do believe that, Copper Bay for those specific customers are a great alternative for them. I think that when they begin looking for homes, the first step, and, our team is well equipped, excuse me, to help customers out with this, but at large, I think that if someone's transitioning from a rental to home ownership, the first thing they got to make sure that they do is team up with a great lender,
Hmm.
right? And it not only has to be someone that is a great lender that understands all of the financing solutions that are available for a first time buyer, which there's a lot of them, right?
Hmm.
That people aren't even aware of.
Right.
But in addition to that, if that renter needs help, right? If that renter needs help saving for a down payment, if that renter needs help improving their credit score, if that renter needs help fixing their ratios, someone that is actually going to work with them, which is something we offer, is called a game plan, right?
Right.
Is going to stick with them, lay out the game plan, hold them accountable, check in on them, make sure that they're not spending, $200 a week at Starbucks or anything like that. So then they can go and experience that level of home ownership, right?
Right.
In addition to that, I think something especially first time buyers have to really, really think about is what is the total cost of home ownership,
Hmm.
right? And this is something we always educate folks on because typically for many of our solutions, we compete against the resale market, right?
Correct.
And with limited supply out there, usually it's a home that's quite a bit older. And so our clients might be looking at a used home per se and say, hey, that home, it's 25, it's 30 grand lower in price, right? It's going to save me, 150 bucks per month. But what I would encourage them to do is look at the total cost of ownership. And what I mean by that is that most customers are concerned about price, because concerned about payment, because they're really concerned about their cash flow, right?
Right.
They want to be able to take vacations, have a nice car, whatever kind of fits into their lifestyle. And sometimes when you look at a used home, your mortgage payment might be a little bit lower, but what you have to try to understand is what are the true repair and replacement costs,
Right.
not to mention the inconvenience, right? Because if you have a home remodeled, repaired, it's not like these DIY reality shows, right? It
Right.
doesn't happen in half a day.
No.
Um, and the number of people I've ever talked to that said, "Hey, I had a remodeling job done on my home, and it came in under budget, and it was awesome," is zero, right? It's
Right.
zero, right?
It's
Like
usually
everybody knows
way
that. So,
over, and I'm so
so it's
mad.
really understanding not only what is the true cost of that, but for first time buyers, like how are they going to come up with that cash, right?
Hmm.
How are they going to come up with that cash? And then how much am I going to be inconvenienced,
Right.
right? And then another thing is, you can pay off your home, but you never stop paying utilities, right? So
Correct.
there's no glory in having a gas guzzling house,
Right.
right? And so when you look at, okay, what's my repair and replacement going to be? What's my mortgage payment going to be? What are my utilities going to be? And then you compare it to our home, right? Which again, your mortgage payment might be a little bit higher because the price is higher. However, your utility bills are $150 to $200 lower per month, and you don't have any of those repair and replacement costs, which are highly inconvenient to you. More times than not, on a cash flow level, you come out lower per month on our home, and that is a huge education piece we always try to share with customers.
Yeah, and it's super cool because you guys do the same thing. You have like the third party ResNet scores.
Correct.
We're saving on average like 2 grand a year
Correct.
typically,
Yep.
which is huge. And so you're always competing with the resale market. We're also competing with the older market. So
Right.
what you're dabbling into with like the savings, like our rents might be a little bit higher than these houses as well, but then like you're gaining all that money back
Correct.
essentially in the utilities. So like you can't pay off your house, which is really cool that you said, or you can pay off your house, which is really cool that you said that. But you can't pay off your utility bills, and that fully goes over into the rental
Right.
market as well. So I think that's just
Correct.
like really cool. Where we used to think that renting and purchase was a little more countercyclical, but I
Mhm.
feel like we kind of march in the same line, kind
Correct.
of helping the same people navigate those waters, and it's just really cool how it like continues to spin back and
Yep.
really be something that we see kind of eye to eye on.
Because at the end of the day, even if you purchase a brand new home,
Hmm.
at some point, 15, 20, 30 years down the line, things are going to have to be repaired. Things are going to have to be replaced.
Hmm.
But the advantage of a new home is it's much further down the line
Right.
than a used home. You could do an inspection on a used home and maybe you say to yourself, gosh, I've got about 20 grand, right, to get the home to where it needs to be.
Mhm.
And, the furnace, for example, could pass inspection, be great, but you might have to replace it in 3 years,
Right. Same with the
right?
roof, which
2 years,
people
right?
that is a
Things like
big
that. So
difference.
it's thinking about not only was what's in the immediate, but what's going to happen in the next 5 years, right? And
Mhm.
some of that stuff is really unknown.
Right.
Lance, you did good.
Thank you. Thank you. Are we going to eat now?